The Lady in White, written and performed by Tony Capobianco. A semi-transparent woman wearing a 19th century white dress appears to kids and young adults as they are on their phones. The ghostly apparition raises her right index finger in front of her lips and waves it back and forth. She appears a half-dozen times. Then, the young adults are found with grave burns. The wounds are so serious that they cause permanent disfiguration or death. Those are the details that various stories of the Lady in White have in common. Angela thought that all of the accounts of the Lady in White were nothing more than juvenile stories. As a junior in high school, she had outgrown the tall tales told at slumber parties and sleepovers. Ghost stories were as real as stories of levitation and magic. That is to say, to her mind, it was all rubbish. One day after school, Angela FaceTimed her friend Faith. Faith swiped to accept the FaceTime and answered. "Hey, Ange, have I got a story for you?" Angela said, "Oh, you do you? Is this the story about the girl who borrowed an awesome top from her beautiful friend, and then, after a long adventure, returns it in pristine condition?" Faith stood her phone up on the kitchen island and replied, "Relax already. You'll get your top back. I just have to apply some stain remover and wash it first." Her face growing red, Angela responded, "Faith Izzy Anderson, what did you do to my top?" Faith, with a twinkle in her eyes, said, "Oh, it's no biggie. Some marinara sauce from my meatball parm hero dropped onto the top." Angela, with her face now as red as a lobster, yelled, "I didn't even get to wear that top yet. I knew that I shouldn't have let you borrow that thing." Smirking, Faith responded, "Haha, I'm just messing with you. There wasn't a chicken parm incident, and no shirts were hurt during the production that is known as my life." Still frustrated, Angela said, "That wasn't funny. You're gonna pay for this." Faith's face suddenly grew pale as she gasped in terror. The former look of playful mischief had been replaced by a look of grave concern. After a minute of heavy breathing, Faith said, "There was a woman in my house." Angela rolled her eyes and replied, "Right. How gullible do you think I am? I'm not falling for it. You're such an actress." Rather than looking into her phone's camera, Faith's eyes repeatedly scanned the room from left to right as she said, "She was wearing a weird white dress. The dress looked like it was from the Civil War era. She was here, but not all of her was here. It was as if she was missing some pixels. Then, she raised her right hand and extended her pointer finger upward while the rest of her hand was closed. Next, she wagged her finger back and forth in a dismissive manner. A moment later, she disappeared into thin air." Angela took a sip from her glass of water and replied, "The Lady in White? You have got to be kidding me. You might have gotten me with your first joke, but you're not getting me this time. You see, I was actually afraid that you ruined my shirt, but I'm not afraid now for two reasons. I don't believe you, and there is no such thing as a lady in white. You've obviously just repeated the tale that Erica told us the other night." A week passed. Faith saw the Lady in White at least once per day over that week, growing increasingly more afraid until fear turned into pure terror. She became a shell of herself. Her friends remarked about the unnerving change. Distant, nervous, and depressed, Faith no longer resembled the bubbly, playful, and ever-present person that she always had been. While concerned for the welfare of her friend, Angela believed that the problem was psychological in nature. The idea that a ghostly lady in white was haunting her friend seemed absurd to her. Although Angela did believe that Faith sincerely believed that she was being haunted, that didn't make it true. Something may seem real, and that perception could impact someone just the same as if the event was real. Nevertheless, Angela didn't believe that Faith was in any real danger. One Monday, however, Faith had been found in her bedroom with third-degree burns all over her hands, arms, and face. When Faith hadn't come downstairs to get ready to go to school, her mom went to check on her. What she found was a horrifying sight that no parent ever wants to see. Her baby girl was face down on her bed and she was non-responsive. After turning her daughter's head, the severity of the tragedy became clear. The smartphone beside her had exploded and badly injured her. Unfortunately, when the paramedics arrived, they sorrowfully announced that Faith was dead. Devastated by the loss of one of her closest friends, Angela grieved deeply. Denial soon gave way to feelings of guilt, remorse, anger, and sadness. The unpleasant emotions came in waves. Before long, Angela was constantly on her phone. Hours would pass as she cried while looking at pictures of Faith. Rereading old text messages from her friend helped her to relive the friendship that they had shared. From first grade until the day that she died, the two had been inseparable. An intense bond exists between people who grow up together and share the experiences of elementary, middle, and high school. The two girls had each other in the awkward elementary years, in which finding your first friends can seem so intimidating. They played with each other's dolls and invented fantasy worlds for them to inhabit. Once middle school came and boys suddenly became desirable in their eyes, the two friends changed together. When Angela had passed her driving test and gotten her license, Faith was there to celebrate. It was to Faith that Angela confided after she fell in love with a boy named Nicholas. He was her first great love. Every step of the way, they were there for each other. Now, it was over. Faith wouldn't be there for the next step in life. She wouldn't be there for high school graduation or for the first day of college. If she were to get married, Faith wasn't going to be the bridesmaid. Faith wasn't going to be able to live the life that she loved so very much. Beautiful sunsets, waves crashing on the beach, the smell of blooming flowers in the spring, or the warm feel of the sun on her skin were wonders that she'd never get to experience again. The opportunities to make new family memories or fall in love were cruelly taken away from her. It wasn't fair. Life often isn't fair. Those were the kinds of thoughts that tormented Angela as she scrolled through the pictures of her dear friend. The loss of Faith was the first real loss that she had suffered. The first taste of death is often powerful and an unwelcome experience. The heaviness can become unbearable. Any remaining childhood innocence frequently dies with the first death of a loved one. With tears in her eyes, Angela whipped her head to the left. She thought that she had seen something out of the corner of her eye. She could have sworn that someone had briskly walked by the foot of her bed. Looking back and forth a few times, she noted that no one was there. She was all alone in her room. A few minutes later, she looked into the mirror on her dresser and thought of all the times that she and Faith had looked into that mirror together as they tried on clothes. From silly and spooky Halloween costumes to prom dresses, they tried it all on in front of that mirror. The pale face of a deceased woman appeared in the mirror. The woman was wearing an old white dress. It reminded Angela of a dress from a textbook that covered the American Civil War. The ghostly woman stared at Angela. It was almost as though the woman in the mirror was staring right through her. The look on the figure's face was one of disapproval and harshness. Next, the ghostly apparition in the mirror raised her index finger and pointed it up toward the ceiling and shook it back and forth. After about 60 seconds, the horrifying image in the mirror disappeared. Goosebumps rose all over Angela's body. While the fear that she felt was real, she hadn't believed her eyes. Yet, the lady in the mirror appeared precisely as Faith had described her. Indeed, the image matched all accounts of the lady in white. Angela assumed that what she had seen was nothing more than the power of suggestion coupled with emotional distress and exhaustion. She reasoned away the unsettling experience as she cried herself to sleep. The next day, Angela came home from a difficult day at school. Everywhere she went, especially at school, she was reminded of Faith. Knowing that she would never see Faith at school, at her house, or any place else ever again, drove the knife of despair deeper into her heart. She felt alone. The sense of isolation was only heightened by the fact that her parents wouldn't be home from work for a couple of hours. Taking her phone out of her pocket, she placed it on the kitchen counter. Looking at the phone's black screen, she thought about how Faith would only see nothingness now and forevermore. Gazing into the blackness of the idle phone, it happened again. The woman in white appeared once more. Even though Angela's hands were nowhere near the phone, and even though the screen was locked, the phantom image returned. Shivers spread down her spine as the lady in white wagged her pointer finger in what seemed to be a warning. Angela's heart beat faster as her breathing increased. Frightened, she took several steps backward. Closing her eyes and then reopening them, the ghastly woman in white had vanished from the screen of the phone. Dismissing what she had seen, Angela tapped the phone screen with her pointer finger to initiate facial recognition and then proceeded to open up her photos. She needed to see Faith's pretty face. The fear of not being able to recall the details of her friend's face dominated her. Invasive thoughts penetrated deep into her mind. The thoughts suggested that she would soon forget what Faith looked like. The wicked thoughts also suggested that her memories of her friend would vanish like deleted pictures disappear. Anxiety and panic began to ravage her. A terrible sadness drowned her as she looked at old pictures and videos. Hoping that a glass of water might somehow alleviate her anxiety attack, Angela walked to the refrigerator. Placing a glass into the water dispenser in the refrigerator door, she pressed for water. Crystal clear water began filling the cup. As the water continued to pour, it turned red in color. It looked like blood was being dispensed into her cup. Shocked and horrified, Angela dropped the glass onto the kitchen floor. The sound of glass shattering added to her already elevated level of fear. When she went to clean up the mess, she saw that there wasn't any blood on the floor. The glass had only contained water. Yet, she was certain that she had seen blood. She had never been prone to hallucinations before. Once her anxiety subsided, she rationalized that the experience had been the natural product of intense grieving. The following night, things escalated. In the solitude of her room, Angela reread her old text messages from Faith. Reading over Faith's description of the lady in white, Angela noted how many similarities existed between their chilling experiences. As she read Faith's old texts, the screen flickered. The text disappeared. Only a blank white screen remained. Angela tried to back out of the application. The attempt failed. Then, all of a sudden, it looked as though someone was typing a message on the blank screen. In red letters, The incoming message read, "Put the telegram typewriter away. Put the telegram typewriter away. Put the telegram typewriter away." The choice in words confounded Angela. If her phone had been hacked, who would call a phone a telegram typewriter? It was most peculiar. Puzzled, she sat on her bed. After restarting her phone in the hopes of correcting whatever was wrong, she returned to reading old texts from Faith. The ringtone on her phone sounded and broke the silence. An incoming FaceTime call came in. The call came from an unknown caller. Although Angela hadn't accepted the call, the FaceTime began all the same. The face on the other side of the screen belonged to the lady in white. That dreadful, pale, sinister face stared right at her. Terrified, Angela jumped several feet. She scurried until her back was against the headboard. Trembling all over, she had become paralyzed by fear. The lady in white spoke through the phone and said, "Naughty girls must be punished. Ladies mustn't be staring into the devil's mirror all day. Stop now or else." Believing that profound grief was driving her crazy, Angela refused to heed the dire warnings. Compelled to look at the devil screen, she continued to use it to text her boyfriend and to look at old pictures of the recently departed Faith. The next day, her father walked into a horrifying discovery. His sweet, beautiful daughter Angela was motionless in her bed. Her pillow had been seared. Severe third-degree burns covered her hands, arms, and face. Just as happened to Faith, it appeared that her phone had exploded. The police department determined that the battery had failed and exploded. The explosion caused severe burns. Unlike Faith, Angela hadn't been killed. However, she was horribly disfigured, and to this day, she is in a coma. It's been 2 weeks since Angela's tragedy. She is my girlfriend. She confided her extraordinary experiences to me. I urged her to be cautious and to not dismiss the possibility that the phenomenon was supernatural. I told her that it was better to be safe and feel silly than to be cynical and dead. Unfortunately, she remained stubborn. While I'm thankful that she is still alive and I hope that she will regain consciousness, I am pained by the difficult fight that waits for her. Angela is my angel, and I will remain by her side for as long as it takes. She's beautiful on both the inside and the outside. I can't imagine life without her, and I refuse to try to do so. I choose to be optimistic. As long as there's breath, hope remains. Seeing the similarities between what happened to Faith and Angela, I was determined to find answers. Speaking with Erica, I learned some interesting information. Erica was the first of our friends to see the lady in white. Erica, too, had been threatened by the evil woman in white, but she heeded the warning. Rarely does she use her smartphone or tablet. Together, Erica and I researched stories of the lady in white. There are hundreds of accounts of her hauntings. Reports of encounters with her date back to 1886. The earliest accounts speak of similar frightening encounters, but they didn't seem to be deadly. Injuries purportedly caused by the lady in white show up in the 1940s. Deaths purportedly attributed to the lady in white seem to have started to pop up in the 1990s. Erica and I think that she is gaining more strength over time. We posit that at first she was only able to frighten people. Next, she had gained enough strength to physically interact with the material world and cause physical harm to objects and persons. Then, she became powerful enough to murder her targets. We can't prove our theory, but we are convinced that we're correct. Several nights ago, I saw the lady in white. She appeared in my bathroom as I scoured the internet for eyewitness accounts. Sitting on the toilet, the pale lady in white materialized in front of me. As she did with others, she waved her index finger in a threatening way. Having been on my phone even more than usual, I think that I must have drawn the attention of her dead eyes. Although I refuse to stop looking for answers, I have to be careful. If I am not careful, I know that I'll end up severely injured or worse. Who is the lady in white? The oldest stories suggest that her name was Abigail Thornton. It is said that Abigail was a wealthy plantation owner near Charleston, South Carolina. A vicious slave owner, she enforced strict standards on her husband, children, and slaves. Severe consequences met anyone who violated her standards for manners and modesty in dress. If Abigail discerned that anyone had broken one of her interpretations of biblical morality, she'd have them beaten severely. It was said that she slit her husband's throat because on one occasion he failed to keep the Lord's Day holy. She then blamed the murder on a slave who didn't wash her dishes to her liking. Her reign of terror continued until her death in 1886. The haunting started shortly after she had died of consumption. Her cruelty and tyrannical nature were so great that they chain her to the physical world to this day. Having seen the ghastly apparition ourselves, Erica and I attest to the fact that she looks remarkably like the old black and white photos of Abigail Thornton. The lady in white is dangerous. There has to be a way to destroy her, or at least to stop her. We have read a lot of lore regarding how to end a haunting, but nothing seems certain or reliable. With an evil ghost as strong as she is, we have to be exceedingly cautious. While the prospect of facing her terrifies me, I feel that we must do it. I owe it to Faith and to Angela. I have to avenge them and exact justice. Besides, if no one does something to stop her, the casualties of the lady in white will only continue to grow. Her unnatural reign of terror must end. The sanctity of human life we must defend. Thanks for stopping by the Haunted Half Moon Inn. I hope that you have enjoyed your stay. Before you go, please put a wooden stake through the like button and leave a comment for the spirits to read. If you did enjoy your time with us, subscribe to this undead channel. Doing those little things really helps me to reach more souls. The world is sick and hurting. It needs more horror. Help me to heal the world through horror. Together, we can haunt this world one home at a time. And always remember, just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they aren't there.